Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Ice 9, and of course this series, it's Italy. Well, we're rushing here to... Rushing. Yes, you get it. Here to defend this province before we see a big flood of tanks, so it looks like they're heading in some different directions here. A big stack of these 6 division with mobile anti-aircraft units, well, 8 armored reconnaissance and 7 regular tank brigades, 3 light tank brigades, so 3 heavy, so there's probably, wow, 13 or more divisions there. 6, well, no, I guess with the, well, no, there's about 10 divisions, I guess, because of the transport would be the easiest thing, 10 divisions. Okay, well, just there alone. Here, I don't know how many, but there's a big stack of them. Oh, come on. There we go. And we can see here the Japanese are doing pretty well. Pushing here, starting down on Sakhalin Island. Going to take back their territory as well as the rest of the island. That's got to be, well, the big thing here, of course, is the 15 victory points of Vladivostok. If we look at victory points, let's see, Leningrad is 20, Moscow is 20, and Stalingrad, I think, is 15. No, just 10. So it's bigger than Stalingrad in victory points, but just a little smaller than Leningrad and Moscow. So it's a big win there. Here we're looking just 2 for there. So of course we've already got 2 points for Sevastopol, and we're about ready to get Rostov back for another 2. We'd like to get this, we never actually have. I think this is 5, is it? Bound to? No, just 2. Okay, well. Yeah, I'm pounding some of these provinces well with lots of air power. Hopefully doing some good usefulness. Making them pay for attacks. These attacks them out, so I'm not that really worried about. Maybe I'm wrong on not worrying, but okay, more I think infantry divisions. Yes, just one. Gonna run out of HQs here very soon. So I put a few more in the production pipeline. Okay, let's see, do we want to move you, and you, and you. On board ship, is that it? No, he's coming, but oh, these 2. Need to get them there too. For a while. Or back there, actually. Already been there once. And we now have another armor division here. We need more HQs up here. There. On, now we just have to, let's shift a little the air power here. Actually, maybe this guy here could, he needs to rest up. Oh, that's good. Let's beat this guy up here. Attack here, I guess. Well, these guys doing naval bombing. I keep forgetting to switch that for some of these guys. Well, you can have one turn of that, but then come back for ground attack. Take Rostov on Don and get moving again. Let's cut across this river with our two divisions with engineering capability. You come down here like we did before and just swallow up a lot of provinces. I should combine a couple of these single submarines, taking a few losses so that they're a little stronger, getting the, I think there's a couple of singles. Oh, he should be attached to one of the naval bases. Yeah, there's the other single. Oh no, it's here. The other guy's going here. You go there. No, I meant to hit there. That's where I was aiming for. Didn't hit my target. Got these divisions coming very soon. Okay, well, you guys can take a rest for a while. Please get reorganized. Okay, you move fast, so both want to take territory and a little worried about taking too much, as it may send the Germans in not a good path. So I want them to head for this area here, of course. Okay, 2 more divisions. Okay, this time we're just moving you straight to there. Oh, I should have changed him first. Let's do that. Let's be smart this time and change him first. There we go. And he's moving forward as well. Good. He's engaging some strategic bombers. Well, good. Feel much better now that I have that. Oh, these guys made it safely. Second division in that province. Okay, well. They're doing good for supporting elements, and so are these guys. Well, maybe some of these divisions as well. I guess I'm hoping to add some of those elite light infantry and anti-tank units too. Well, it's a lot of light tanks, but we won. Oh, we've still got a couple more. I sort of missed these. Oh, these are parachutists, Fagore and Nimbo. That's right, that's why I wasn't using those. They already have an elite division headquarters. Okay, we needed some more destroyers on this fleet to help protect and absorb some attacks too, but they should really help with things like anti-aircraft. I say that because, well, more things shooting up at them have got to be good, but also just historically, if it's, I guess I just maybe have an uncritical expectation that whether it's the mod developers or the game developers are doing a good job at mimicking history. I'll wait till these guys get there. faster. Mentioning that, I'm going to change these guys' tasking again. Let's do this. Give them at least one escort here. Let's put them out to sea. Yeah, just move out to sea for now. Sit out there. Let those guys get healed up. Okay, those, they could use, well, yeah, they got elite light infantry already, okay. They could use elite light infantry, and so, let's do that. There we go, they'll be able to hold a lot better now. Their headquarters are going to come this, well, soonish. And yes, we're pushing them into their good. You come across that river and get into there. I watched, I think more than half. But I caught it it was part way into it. Really good documentary. Wish I looked on YouTube to see if it was there. It was made back, I think, in 1975. It was called The Sorrow and the Pity. And it was all about France and the occupation. You know, Vichy France and dealing with that. Went into a lot of really good stuff on Laval and on Pétain. Had one fascinating interview with one of the survivors of the SS Division Charlemagne, and his viewpoints and talking about it. And he really very much focused in, and which I only know peripherally compared to some of the other stuff, particularly France in this period. I know I just made this series of French Follies, which is sort of what I feel about what a lot of the French were doing. But 1934 and in February, I think it was of 34, some sort of uprising type thing that was going on then that really formed him. He was a teenager at the time, and I think of an aristocratic background. I'm pretty sure of that. but maybe not necessarily an aristocratic as in a guy with a title, but you know, sort of older money type upper class kind of Frenchman who saw and sort of in times he jumped in his use between National Socialists and fascists. It was really fascinating. It's all in French, or 90% of it's in French. Some of they were interviewing the British Prime Ministers. Was it Harold Macmillan or somebody? Who some of his answers he was giving in rather fluent French, but some of the stuff he was answering in English. Everything was subtitled, and some of the stuff was they had at least one German tour guide going through one of the royal palace at Vichy that was taken over by the Vichy, you know, giving a tour, I guess, to German tourists in 1975. So that was in German, but I say most of it was all in French with English subtitles. But he saw it as a sort of, starting in 34, as a binary choice of the two ideologies that were going to be able to change the world, and that there were only two of them, you know, at that time. And it was either communism or fascism. And because of his background, and I think to some degree, I'm sort of reading some of this, because, well, you know, he would say things, well, from my upbringing, or words to that effect, my background or whatever, you know, as a kid, my only choice was, you know, to be a fascist as opposed to, you know, going left. So I'm also getting some of that stuff reading into it, maybe because of the religious aspects. I think he was a fairly strong Catholic, and so if you're a fairly strong Catholic, you're not going to go communist. If you're thinking of the new ideologies, and whether it's going to be communism or fascism, and you had to pick one of the two, and he said a lot of it was not so much, because the interviewer was actually, there was some very sort of I mean, they weren't gotcha kind of questions, like, why did you do such evil things to some of these people? Because they were interviewing some communists, they were interviewing some resistance people, they were interviewing a bunch of collaborators, you know, people, some of them very close to Peter Laval, meaning like one is his son-in-law, you know, I mean, very close to Peter Laval. Obviously, he was, you know, executed, but so he wasn't around for the interview, but so some people very close to what was going on at the time in this interview, so it was fascinating. But they were very sort of insightful and sort of tough questions, but not gotcha questions. Where was I going with that? So they were interviewing this guy from the SS Division Charlemagne, and so his only two choices he sought, as opposed to being you know, a liberal or whatever, was communism and fascism. He chose fascism. Part of it was just to sort of, he was saying to rebel against, because, you know, that the ideology itself didn't necessarily matter, or the details intellectually. Because the interviewer asked us something about intellectually, how did you find fascism, or something like that, you know, what did you think about it? Or, well, it wasn't so much of an intellectual thing, it was more of a emotional and rebellious thing to be a fascist kind of thing, and I thought that was rather insightful. So he was, because he was using the number of 7,000 men in the Waffen-SS Charlemagne division that was sent east, and he says there are about 300 survivors from it. And well, who knows what was going on at the time, but this is what he claims that was going on at the time, that because he went to either, I think, Bad Tolz. They didn't say the name, but I'm thinking Bad Tolz, as either like a junior officer or NCO training. I think it was officers training, or NCO or whatever training that he went, and along with a bunch of other men for this division. And, you know, because he said at first they were trying to give all the, he said they were trying to give all this sort of German mythology to these, officer candidates, and if you've watched my German series, I've gone into some of the stuff that is very, very, very ideological in the Waffen SS and giving this stuff. And it wasn't just, ideology of national and socialism as in, political philosophy. That's how the left always looks at it, sort of an economic / political philosophy, but more of the mythical philosophy of the National Socialist movement as sort of seen by Himmler and others. And at some point he said, or, they sort of gave up on that because they realized once a Frenchman, always a Frenchman, it wasn't going to go. And, well, so they, he was asking some questions, forget some of the details. Well, what did you call the Germans, the Boche. Because that's, the sort of the French, slang, negative slang for the Germans, in the school to the Germans, or amongst themselves to the Germans, being overheard by the Germans, the Boche. And supposedly, at least this is what he's saying now, 30 years after the war. Which may not have been true at the time, and maybe what he's trying to sort of justify, I'll grant that. But that they were not at all, 100% with, everything that the Germans, were doing. And they were sort of fighting against communism. And he claims that he himself, because they had his name, but maybe it meant something if I knew who this guy was a bit more. He came back to Vichy before being sent east to try to see Marshal Pétain, and was denied an interview. And, well, did you see Laval? No, he wouldn't see me either. And basically he was said that they were complaining about being put into the German uniform, and particularly that uniform. And so he was, basically saying that they were tricked into being the SS as opposed to being in a French anti-Bolshevik type, fascist type units. Because sometimes he was talking when he was referring later on to the fighting with the Germans, using the term National Socialist, and that he was a National Socialist, and earlier on he was talking that he was a fascist. And he says, now he says he's afraid of all ideologies. And, well, everyone has an ideology, it's just a belief system, but meaning these sort of dogmatic, I could tell from what he's talking about, dogmatic ideologies, that you must believe in X, Y, and Z kind of thing, that he was afraid. So he himself very much claimed to be reformed in that way. And now, of course, you're a Frenchman who fought in the Waffen SS in in this 1975, looking sort of rather stylish Frenchman for that time period kind of thing. What are you going to say? Oh, yeah, I love the Germans and hated French. No, you're going to say what he was saying. I don't know how correct or true he was in saying. It was very interesting. And a very interesting comment was that he also made, because he claimed that, because they asked him about, the Jews and the Holocaust kind of situation. He says, well, of course I knew they were rounding up the Jews. And I knew there were camps. There were camps all over the place, he says. And he says, there were 2 million Frenchmen in camps as prisoners of war from, at this time, because that's, the Germans took approximately that many, from the Battle of France. And, I knew there were prisoner of war camps, and I knew there were political prisoners camps. I didn't make a distinction between the two, just that there were people, lots of people in camps, as opposed to death camps and horrid, horrid situations that were going on, these sort of work to death camps and other things. So he very much claimed, again,
I believe him actually on the idea that because the Germans weren't being shy about rounding up the Jews, they were doing it rather publicly. They had the Warsaw Ghetto. It's over. No, it's no. Where am I? Here it is. The Warsaw Ghetto and other things. So it was quite well known that they were putting people in camps. But he just, and so they were hiding what they were trying to do with a lot of stuff going on. It's interesting. They have Kepler over here with this guy. Not all of the ports. No, we got the garrisons. That's good. So I believe him that he didn't look any closer at it and just thought, people in camps. You know. Not, whether he thought it was a good thing or bad thing, but just people in camps. And it was the sign of the times. But it was a fascinating interview. I'm not going into nearly as much deep. But, it's very interesting that they went into the sorrow and the pity. I recommend it to any of you who want to better understand, particularly France and the occupation, but also just how the people viewed things then. His sort of, you were either a fascist or a communist if you were going to be one of the ideologies that built the future or whatever, And so, meaning everything else, monarchists, capitalists, or whatever, those were all things of the past. And, I'm reading into it, but it was interesting and how some of these people were justifying themselves. And there was one guy who, and they also dealt with overreaction maybe, or maybe just, shall we say, the reaction of the French people on liberation to collaborationists and other elements within France. When the Allies came in and they interviewed one German soldier who was one of the military, just soldier types, nothing over a sergeant, if even that was specifically in Vichy. They were dealing with a lot of stuff in and around Vichy at the time, and that he was wounded somehow and left for like a day at a train station, tied to his stretcher so that he couldn't move. And some people would spit on him as they went by, and other Frenchmen would get him water or whatever. They sort of knew he was there, and I'm guessing with some others, but that he brought in, they were going to take him over to some hospital to get more medical treatment. I gather it wasn't seriously wounded, but wounded, not bleeding to death, but just, he would have been either laying on the stretcher on the train station or in some sort of bed situation or stretcher situation at the, where he was going to at this point. But his interesting comment was, and this was in 75 again, that maybe it was better that we lost, because he was back in Bavaria, living in Bavaria. Had Hitler won, he just would have kept going and going and going, and I might have ended up being somewhere in Africa, either still fighting or occupying places or something. And so he was imagining himself that Hitler kept ongoing conquests, ongoing wars, ongoing whatever, and seeing German soldiers instead of now. Now, of course, this guy was a guy who had, I guess, somewhat of a cushy war in that at least part of the time he was at Vichy. Not saying this guy didn't have frontline experience, but he was, and he was taken by the French and whatever, and eventually gone back home, compared to all of the soldiers that were captured by the Soviets and were maybe in 75 still in gulags in the Soviet Union and their terrible treatment, of course. So those people might not be so happy that they lost the war, but it's very fascinating to look at that. It was very, very well done for some of the people. I thought it was interesting, and it really confirmed my view that Laval was just a really, really, really bad man. Peter Laval. He was just not a good person, including some stuff that supposedly, and they showed some of the documented proof that the Germans were rounding up in Paris, or requested the rounding up of Jews in Paris for one of their things, and but it was everyone over the age of 16. Where Laval changed it and said, no, get all the children, everyone, the children too. And there were, I don't know, they told the number like 7 or 4,000 or 7,000 children, the exact number doesn't, that were in this roundup. And some of they dealt, one of the persons who had looked into us was a French Jew, and who made it, they got him to Auschwitz, but he escaped at some point. Towards the end of the war. And, well, how many of those children survived? He said, oh, none. None of those children. They were, when they got to the camps, they were immediately killed at getting there. Because, they just killed the children, all the children. They were too young to work. So it was, that Laval, and they talked about this, and had some people around with Laval, and they didn't whitewash Pétain either, but they talked about whether he deserved, what he got after it and that kind of thing. But I put him as sort of a tragic figure. Not saying I agree with his choices of collaboration with the Germans. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying I really do believe Pétain was trying to do what he thought was best for the French people, where Laval was much more ideologically agreed with National Socialism and was doing some very evil things as well. So I think that they're very different persons. At least that's my interpretation as a non-expert on the situation. Are they both here? No, not yet. Not both of them. We got some of these, like these units and these, and definitely these could all use those anti-tank guns. Oh good, they're really messing up these divisions as they show up. That's good. Let's get a better choice for commander here. Okay, I'm not going to take any of the... Well, I'm not going to attach any of the veteran HQs to standard divisions. They'll wait a little bit. We are quickly building it. Well, May, April 26th, May 19th. That's the longer I want. I don't know. I'm moving this HQ down. Well,
let's go here for now. They're heading back. They're heading out there. We've got a lot of, I don't want to I'm over choking this, I think, right now. And if we can take Azov, I want to just put them straight into there. Let's look through here. Since that's a fast moving, I think we're going to leave that just the way it is, but the 11th Division will get an anti-tank unit. There we go, that'll help them, and of course that's give them more organization. Right, okay. Okay, we're going to reduce this down a bit. Not a lot, but some. We got lots of supplies right now. And I don't mind getting units built. Again, at this point, it's just to run around and cause as much mischief, with preferably not fully losing any of the divisions. That's after that abortive attack here. Don't know if I should send them back or to the Black Sea or what. Okay, motorized engineer upgrade and medium armor advanced. Great. Those are down in here. Medium artillery. We haven't been making any of those, so I'm reluctant to spend the leadership upgrading. A lot of these could be upgraded, I know. Yeah, that leadership would be good. I should be doing that. And we can afford the manpower, and we can afford the metal and energy and whatnot, so we'll get that going as well. Yes, you may have supplies. Oh, let's drop this in here. I'm not sure who I want to. If I want to attach it here or put it to another unit. Okay, we're back in the theater. Good. Let's send you, because I don't want you to get trapped into it. Let's send you this way. Yes, I'm micromanaging the path I want them to take. Okay, you're too far back there, so let's send you guys and pick them up. I'm actually rather surprised I've done as well as I have holding this line when I look at how much armor there's been against me. We could support that with some air, I guess. Okay, you can attack. You should be up there intercepting everybody. Fine. Yeah, I'll send you back to here to get rebuilt. Now we can do the same with you. And you can also come in here and pound this guy.
Oh, well, very good. We're at very high popularity now. Great. No, thank you. Okay. 3rd Infantry Division. Names are getting less creative. We've run out of the pre-selected names, I guess. Well, let's look at, yeah, capital ship fire control. We want to do that. Well, when are you guys going to get there? Okay, very, very soon it looks like. They've lost the Revenge, and they lost the Nevada. Okay, partisan suppression. Yeah, we'll let that continue. And, well, we don't need that. Well, you can rest up. Okay, well. Now you come up to there. Yeah, we lost Boffa, whatever. Materials, yeah, okay. Are you also attacking the Bulawayo? You attack down into here. That may not be the best choice. Oh, how are we doing down here? Okay, still moving forward.
units down here. Okay, well, you can attach to a division or core, you to a core. No, you're way too far away from that one. Yeah, we may move the core up to here, I think. Okay, well, you march down to here. You march to here. You come to here because you're all busted up. Really sort of hoping to hold along the dawn, but let's see where we end up. Okay, yes, you can have some supplies. Oh, fine, a bunch of those motor torpedo boats. Very good. No. Guess we're mostly just waiting for some HQs. They're coming, not as fast as I'd like, but they're coming. We'll see how long those are. Oh, that could be a problem. Support that attack. There we go. Ground attack there. Finish those guys. Okay, well, we lost here. Oh well. Here do want to win. Move forward. Oh, we lost here. Okay. Maybe the Germans will attack now. Okay, let's see. Those guys may be look who to attach that unit to. Yep, we're going with the mountain division. No, not you. You and you. There we go. Now you have some really anti-tank artillery. The sort of trick with these, if you want to use them, the big thing, of course, is the -2 in descent, also the daily descent change, but that could still, depending on what you're doing, be a negative modifier, but there may be like propaganda press and other things just completely outweighing it. If you want to use one of these, make sure you sort of save up 2 of these, or 2 that you don't want to use before, so you fire just after it, because these sort of come in a bit of a clump, because of the cooldown period, to erase the descent. How are the Germans doing? Well, they're sitting just outside of Leningrad. Nice. And they're not anywhere near Moscow yet. This is the second year. They are sort of getting a curse thing going here. Was it this? Kursk is around here somewhere. I can't easily find it, but it's, I think, more down in here. But you know, maybe just the AI goes, oh, we want a bulge to try to attack. And the Japanese are doing rather well, it looks like here. They are already delayed by call. See, I know my geography almost. Okay. And they're going to come down and get Sakhalin Islands. Okay, so we've taken that, but we're going to come back up here because that swamp, I don't want to go into that. These guys are basically stuck down in here. They're going to get out someday, and I don't want to be cut off. So, screw going into the swamp. If we take the airport, fine, let them. Oh, good. We're getting down into here. Okay, yeah, you keep coming. Oh, these guys are already to here. Okay, well, you come down here and threaten to cut them off. If you go to there, you're gonna really start cutting these guys off. You know what might really help you? I want to infrastructure, yeah, logistical bomb. Logistical bomb. Let's mess with the infrastructure of this province pretty badly. Was I hitting the wrong thing the other before? Oh, yeah, no, we want to logistical bomb. Trap them there in essence. Okay, well, what do these guys look like? Actually, they look in pretty good shape. Let's move this mountain division up into the mountains here. Okay, you just defend. Wait. Oh, you're supporting that attack, that's right. Well, let's come here and maybe cut those militia off. get that because they're overrunning. So let's go this way. And I think we'll take this opportunity to end this episode. I want to thank you all for watching. I want to thank you for liking the videos. And of course, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. I want to see you around more often. And also, I do love hearing from you. So please post questions, comments, suggestions, ideas, corrections, other tips, whatever. Love hearing from you. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.